Canada just took a hit that no one was prepared for, even though all the warning signs were right there in plain sight. In the biggest shutdown of its kind, 440 for 7-Eleven stores have been closed across North America, most of them in Canada. And this isn't some temporary downsizing or corporate restructuring. This is a full-scale retreat. Doors locked, staff laid off, communities left without access to one of the most basic services they relied on. And if you're sitting there thinking this is just about a chain of corner stores, you're not seeing the full picture.
If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your feedback helps shape what we cover next, and you being here keeps the conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.
This isn't just a retail decision, it's a flashing red siren for the Canadian economy. One that exposes a disturbing level of fragility in the very structure of daily life. And no one in power seems to be doing anything about it. The areas hit hardest: Western Canada, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, British Columbia, regions that have always been essential to the country's economy, especially because of their role in energy and resource development. But now they're also the first to fall victim to a retail collapse that goes far beyond supply chains or consumer trends. What's happening here is systemic. These provinces have already been carrying the weight of economic instability. Now they're watching stores vanish overnight. And when a 7-Eleven disappears in a smaller community, it's not just a store going dark. It's a loss of late-night safety, a loss of jobs, a loss of access to necessities. In some towns, it was the only place open 24/7, the only place to grab a drink, use an ATM, buy over-the-counter meds, or feel some sense of security after dark. Now those doors are closed, not by choice, but by force, by an economic climate that has become totally unworkable for grassroots retail. Let's talk numbers. This was the largest wave of closures in 7-Eleven's history. And when a company that massive cuts ties this quickly, it's never about one factor. It's about a storm of problems crashing down at once. You've got declining sales because people can't afford to spend like they used to. You've got inflation chewing into every transaction. You've got a spike in retail theft that's become so severe it's now considered a cost of doing business. And then you've got a wall of operational expenses, rising wages, higher electricity rates, and out-of-control security costs that push even the most efficient store into the red. And the biggest gut punch: the loss didn't have to happen like this. There was a real, serious offer from a Canadian firm coached to buy out the Japanese parent company of 7-Eleven. The bid was worth $46 billion. If it had gone through, Canada would have gained some control over the chain's future. We could have had local oversight, a say in what stores stayed open and where. But that offer was rejected, that opportunity gone. Instead, control stayed offshore. And when the math didn't work out anymore, the decision to shut down hundreds of Canadian stores was made without a second thought. Because it was never about the people who worked there, or the communities that depended on them. It was about the bottom line. And if that's not a glaring issue of economic sovereignty, what is? You want to talk about national security? Start with this. A country's ability to provide its citizens with basic access to food, safety, and employment shouldn't hinge on whether or not a foreign corporation decides to pull the plug. But that's exactly what just happened. And it could happen again. Because the systems we've built are fragile and they're being tested, store by store. What's worse is how invisible the crisis still feels. Where's the government response? Where's the policy shift? Where are the emergency meetings on how to protect other businesses before they fold next? Nowhere. Because no one in power seems willing to admit that the shutdown of 7-Eleven in Canada is more than just a business decision. It's a direct result of policy failure. The tobacco and vaping regulations imposed by Ottawa didn't just affect public health, they killed a key revenue stream for convenience stores. These products carried high margins and were a financial lifeline. Once those margins disappeared, many stores were left completely exposed. And while the policy might have been rooted in good intentions, the real-world consequences were never considered. Not when it came to economic survival. On top of that, there's been no effective plan to deal with crime. Retail theft has become a normalized part of operating a store, and without strong law enforcement or meaningful deterrence, chains like 7-Eleven have been bleeding out. You can't run a business if half your revenue is walking out the door, literally. So when people say this isn't just a retail story, they're absolutely right. It's about a system buckling under pressure. It's about what happens when daily life, jobs, safety, access starts to unravel. And when it happens to a company as massive and entrenched as 7-Eleven, the message is clear. No one is safe from the consequences. This collapse is also a brutal reminder that Canada's regions are not being treated equally. Western Canada is bearing the brunt of this failure, yet again. These provinces aren't just resource providers. They're communities, with families, with needs, and when national policy ignores regional realities, these are the results: loss, closure, abandonment. And there's no one lining up to fill the vacuum left behind. No new chains jumping in to replace what's gone. No local stores rushing to take over the leases. Why would they? The environment hasn't changed. The issues that forced 7-Eleven to leave haven't been solved. So those neighborhoods are left with boarded windows and rising tension. And everyone else just moves on. But moving on doesn't mean moving forward. Not if the same conditions stay in place. Not if inflation keeps pushing consumers out of stores. Not if regulation keeps choking margins. Not if crime keeps spiking and governments keep pretending it's not a retail emergency. So where does that leave us? In the middle of a breakdown. One that's spreading across provinces, across industries, and across communities. And unless something changes, we're only going to see more closures, more silence, more communities watching basic infrastructure vanish overnight. If your community has felt the loss, speak up. What did 7-Eleven mean where you live? Was it your only late-night option? Did it provide jobs to your neighbors? Did it help you feel safe walking home after work? Share your story in the comments. And if this story connected some dots for you, like the video, share it with someone who needs to understand what's really going on, and subscribe for more breakdowns. Because this isn't just the end of 7-Eleven in Canada. It's the beginning of something much bigger, and much harder to fix. Let's be honest, what just happened with 7-1 in Canada is more than just another chapter in retail history. It's a breaking point, a line crossed, a moment where the cracks in the system got too big to ignore, and a whole chain, hundreds of stores, simply couldn't hold on any longer. And the most alarming part, it's been treated like a side note. No national debate, no emergency pressers, no task forces announced to figure out how this many communities just lost basic access to essentials. It's like the country quietly accepted the loss and kept moving, as if the lights going out at 444 stores across the continent, most of them in Canada, wasn't a sign of something much bigger unraveling. But it is. What's happened here is the clearest example yet that Canada's street-level economy, the economy of corner stores, late-night cashiers, everyday transactions, is in real trouble. It's not just weakened, it's collapsing. And the shutdown of 7-Eleven isn't the beginning, it's the consequence. The result of long-ignored problems that finally exploded at once. Let's talk about what made this collapse inevitable. Start with sales. They were falling. Not because the product was bad, not because of competition, but because people don't have spending power like they used to. Inflation has hit so hard and so consistently that even impulse purchases like a chocolate bar, a soda, a scratch ticket have dropped off. For a convenience store, those microtransactions are the lifeblood. Without them, revenue dries up fast. Then there's the cost of running these stores. Electricity bills are up. Wages are up. Security costs have gone through the roof. And in cities across the country, theft is no longer just a risk, it's a daily cost of doing business. These stores are losing inventory constantly, and they're expected to absorb it. Law enforcement is stretched thin. Response times are slow. Retail workers are left exposed, and in some cases, afraid to even intervene. That's not sustainable. It's not even safe. And then you add in government policy. This is where things move from difficult to impossible. Ottawa's strict regulations on tobacco and vaping products may have had good intentions behind them, but in practice, they gutted a crucial revenue stream for convenience stores. These were high-margin products. They kept the lights on. Without them, the already razor-thin profits many locations relied on disappeared entirely. So what do you get when revenue drops, costs rise, and regulation takes out your only high-margin category? You get closures, hundreds of them, and not just in one city or one province. These shutdowns are spread across Canada, but the weight of them is hitting Western Canada the hardest. Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, regions that have already faced economic setbacks, slow federal responses, and declining investment. Now they've lost a key piece of community infrastructure, and there's nothing replacing it. That's the part people forget, what these stores were beyond the brand. Yes, 7-Eleven is a global name. But locally, these stores were anchors. In working-class neighborhoods, they were the only place open late. In rural areas, they were the closest thing to a one-stop shop. They provided jobs, security, access. They were part of the daily routine. When you take that away, it's not just a retail loss, it's a social disruption. It's darker streets. It's lost paychecks. It's longer walks to basic necessities. It's increased isolation. And it's a signal to everyone in those communities that their needs aren't being prioritized. And we haven't even talked about the lost opportunity that could have changed everything. The $46 billion bid from Qatar Canadian firm looking to buy 7-Eleven's Japanese parent company could have put the entire chain under domestic control. That's not just a power move. That's strategic sovereignty. That's local decision-making tailored to Canadian communities. That's a chance to say, we value our infrastructure enough to own it. But the deal didn't happen. And that one decision left hundreds of Canadian stores at the mercy of an international boardroom. One that didn't blink when it was time to cut losses and walk away. So now, we are left with empty buildings, unemployed workers, and neighborhoods that feel a little less stable, a little more forgotten. And the policies that drove this collapse, still in place. This isn't just a retail meltdown. It's a blueprint for how economic decay spreads when no one's willing to step in. Because what's the plan now? Who's stepping in to fill those retail spaces? Who's creating jobs in the communities left behind? Who's offering security solutions or economic lifelines to small and mid-sized businesses trying not to be the next to shut down? No one. And that silence is dangerous. It tells every business owner in Canada that no matter how large you are, how long you've served your community, how many people rely on you when the system stops working, you're on your own. That's the message. And it's not one that inspires growth or investment. It's one that leads to more closures, more exits, more disconnection. Because when you see a chain like 7-Eleven collapse under economic pressure, you start to realize, if they can't survive this, who can? That's the question every small business in Canada should be asking right now. And it's the question no one in government seems to be answering. This moment should have been a turning point. It should have sparked an honest conversation about what's happening at the street level. About inflation that's not slowing down. About retail crime that's turning from nuisance to crisis. About regulations that don't balance health goals with economic survival. About ownership who controls the infrastructure we depend on, and who gets to make decisions when things fall apart. But instead, we got business as usual. And communities across the country were left to figure it out themselves. So what do we do with this? We keep talking. We keep calling it what it is, a failure. Not just of business, but of policy, of leadership, of priorities. And we make sure that the next time someone says retail isn't essential, we point to this and say, really? Because for hundreds of Canadian neighborhoods, it was. And no one stepped in when it disappeared. It's easy to underestimate the weight of a store until it's gone. When 7-Eleven shut down hundreds of locations across Canada, what vanished wasn't just a place to grab a snack. It was something far more significant: access. Access to services, access to jobs, access to safe, familiar spaces. And what's worse, it disappeared without warning, without accountability, and without any meaningful backup plan. This wasn't a company trimming the fat. This was a brand that once prided itself on being everywhere, suddenly being nowhere. And if that can happen to 7-Eleven, it can happen to any retail chain, in any city, in any province. Think about the domino effect this causes. A store closes, the staff, mostly part-time workers, students, single parents, are let go. Suddenly, dozens of people in the area are without a paycheck. Rent doesn't wait, bills don't pause. And in smaller communities, these weren't just jobs, they were the jobs. Entry-level, flexible hour positions that helped people survive. Then the foot traffic stops. A store that was once lit up 24/7, pulling in dozens or even hundreds of customers per day, is now dark. The coffee shop next door, fewer customers. The gas station across the street, less visibility. Even local transit sees a dip in traffic, because one more reason to stop in that neighborhood is gone. Safety declines too. These stores, especially in lower-income areas, served as late-night beacons. Their presence alone made streets feel safer. Without them, those corners go quiet. And in many places, quiet doesn't mean peaceful, it means vulnerable. To crime, to neglect, to decay. And yet, none of this is being treated like an emergency. It's not even being acknowledged. Instead, the narrative has been sanitized. Store closures due to market conditions. As if market conditions just randomly spiral out of control without any human decisions behind them. As if this wasn't directly connected to policy choices, economic neglect, and a total lack of regional equity in how this country is run. This wasn't a market failure. It was a policy failure. Inflation didn't just happen, it was mismanaged. Crime didn't spike in a vacuum, it was ignored. And small business viability didn't vanish overnight, it was strangled slowly by regulations that failed to balance intention with impact. Ottawa's increasing regulation of tobacco and vaping products gutted high-margin sales, the kind of revenue that kept many convenience stores afloat. These weren't just vice products. They were the lifeline that allowed stores to stay open longer, hire more staff, and survive the growing costs of operation. Pulling that rug out, without offering any real alternatives, was economic sabotage, plain and simple. Then came the rising costs, energy bills that spiked, wages that increased faster than sales, security costs that ballooned as theft became more organized and more frequent. All of it pushed stores like 7-Eleven into a corner, and when they looked for help, there was none. And let's not forget, there was a moment when this all could have turned out differently. That $46 billion bid by Couche-Tard wasn't just a bold business move. It was a chance for Canada to take back some control over its own retail infrastructure, a shot at keeping decision-making on Canadian soil. But instead of rallying around it, regulators let it pass quietly, and now foreign executives have pulled the plug on hundreds of Canadian stores because the profits didn't measure up. This is what happens when you lose economic sovereignty. When decisions that impact local jobs, safety, and stability are made in another country by people who will never set foot in the places their choices affect. And the communities left behind, they're still waiting for someone to notice. When a store like 7-Eleven vanishes from a neighborhood, it doesn't just create a gap in services, it creates a sense of abandonment, of being left behind by a country that claims to care, but fails to show up when it matters. If you're in one of the communities affected, you already know what this feels like. If you're not, look closely. Because this is a national issue. It's not just about one brand or one sector. It's about how quickly a vital part of our economy can collapse when the warning signs are ignored. Let us know if your area lost a 7-Eleven, or if you're seeing other essential businesses start to disappear. Drop your story in the comments. And if this helped you understand what's really happening, like, share, and subscribe. Because this isn't just a glitch in the system. This is the system, and it's failing the people who need it most. Thanks so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, you're officially part of the small percentage of people who don't just click away, and that means a lot. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me your thoughts, your ideas, or even what you'd like to see next. I read every single one of them, and your feedback genuinely shapes the direction of this channel. If you enjoyed the video, tap that like button. It tells YouTube this content is worth sharing. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next upload. We've got more exciting videos coming, and trust me, you'll want to be here for them. This channel is just getting started, and your support helps it grow faster than you realize. Thank you again for spending a part of your day here with me. Stay curious, stay motivated, and as always, take care of yourself. Until next time, I'll see you in the next video.